Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Intentional Guy. We are here today with a good friend of mine, Josh Rose, and we are in the midst of our 28-day challenge, Josh, on being more intentional in our life and in our marriage. And there's a reason why I wanted Josh to come on the show today and share with us. Josh and I actually attend church together. We're on different campuses now, but we used to be at the same campus. I was in Big City and got to lead his daughter, and he has a
Mhm.
tremendous daughter. But one of the reasons why I wanted Josh to come on here too is because iron sharpens iron, and Josh is one of those men. I look at your marriage, Josh, and I admire it. I look at your family life and I admire it because um, even though you may not be perfect, I watch you uh, get baptized and watched. I've got to watch your life change radically.
Mhm.
Um, and you are someone I want to rub elbows with because how you love your family and your wife is contagious. And I want that. And I really believe we are the sum of the five people we hang out with. And it's really important that we have great men in our lives, uh, not just for the bad times, but for the good times as well, so that we can lift each other up. And you guys really have a tremendous story of how you came to know Christ, but also just watching you lead. So I'm going to hand this over to Josh. And Josh, if you'll just kind of start us off on this conversation and where God's kind of leading you today.
Well, Mike, thank you. Great to be here. I'm excited to be part of what you're doing with Intentional Guy. Excited to be part of this podcast, and obviously, very excited to be part of this 28-day challenge. So, um, our story, the story of myself, my family, really starts up in Boston, which is where I was born and raised. I'm a New Englander at heart, go Patriots, but had too many blizzards and too many other issues, and it was just time to go south and get someplace warm. And so,
Mm-hmm.
about 7, 8 years ago or so, we moved down here to Pensacola, Florida. Um, being a New Englander, uh, there's certain characteristics that they almost become stereotypes, but they're really true. We do tend to be very private people. We don't end up engaging in a lot of community events that often, and more to the point, we have a wall around us when it comes to interacting with people that we don't know, and certainly that's true of myself and my family, and true, I think, really of that sort of Massachusetts Northeast person. When we first moved down here to Pensacola, now living in the South, it was a culture shift for us.
Yes.
I remember uh, being at Walmart early on. We've been in town maybe a month. I was picking up a few things for the house, and some woman I never met before, didn't know, was standing in the aisle holding two jars of pasta sauce, and she looks at me and says, "Okay, well, which one do you think is better?" And my first reaction is, "Hey, lady, get away from me! I don't know you. I'm not going to join your cult or whatever it is that you're asking me for. Just go away." And and that's kind of that whole uh, vibe that we grew up with. And so that, to begin with, was really strange for us, just coming down here, just having conversations with people that we didn't know, being a little bit more open to talking to people and meeting people. Um, our children, you mentioned our daughter Abigail. Abigail was, I want to say, 8 years old at the time. Our son Jonathan was 10 years old. So elementary school, third grade, fifth grade. They were a little bit more open, I think, to meeting people. Obviously, they're the new kids at school, but one of the great parts about living down here on the Gulf Coast is It's such a vibrant military community that there's
Yeah.
always new families coming in and out. And so, even though they were the quote unquote new kids, everybody there was a new kid. And it made it, I think, really easy for them to connect to people. Um, and so they adjusted probably a little bit more readily than we had. I remember one day we had been in town for probably about 6 8 months, and Abby, our daughter, asked us, "Hey, Mom, Dad, can we go to church?" And my first thought was, "Whoa, wait a minute! What are you doing? Where did this come from? Who planted this in your head?" Uh, because for me, I grew up really without any type of spiritual guidance or religion. My dad was Jewish by birth with his family. My mom was Protestant with her family, but they were both children of the '60s, and
Right.
they both really separated from any type of formal religion uh, long before we were born. So by the time I was born in the mid '70s, uh, really they had no engagement with any type of spiritual community or church or. And again, being the Northeast, had a very small circle of friends, and those were the only people that we really interacted with at all. So it's very insular. My wife, Melissa, her family was Catholic, but not really practicing Catholics. She did all of the obligatory things that you had to do growing up in Catholic Massachusetts, which means she had to do the First Communion. She had to do her Sunday school classes up until age 9 or 10. But then after that, kind of the same thing. Her family, her parents, sort of had a falling out with the organized church, stopped attending, got away from it. And so, for us, even though we were married in a church, we really didn't have any type of spiritual connectivity. And
Right.
then I can say, for me personally, I didn't know God. I didn't believe in God. I didn't know if there was a God or not a God. I was not just agnostic, but really ambivalent on it. My work at the time, I worked as a paramedic, and so certainly saw a lot of things in my day to day life that led me to believe that there really couldn't be a God, because how could people suffer
Mm.
like this? How could these things occur? And a lot of tragedy that I was witness to. What didn't directly impact me, but I was there as a witness, as a one of the terms for paramedics is that we are grief mops, and
Hmm.
it's our job just to kind of mop up other people's grief and other people's tragedy. And that, I think, in turn forced a little bit more of a shell, a little barrier around
Right.
me, I believe, when it came to opening up about these types of things. So here we are. We're in a new city. Don't really know many people. Don't really, we love the beach, things like that. Our kids are doing well at school, but we're not really connected into many communities or anything else. And Abigail asked, "Hey, Mom, Dad, can we go to church?" And I think she was probably talking to one of her friends, and somehow it came up, and they talked about it. So we did have some, or still have some really good friends that we had met through our son's football program down here, Misty and Alan Hyde, and
Yeah.
great people, very solid people. And Misty and Alan attended Momentum, and so we said, okay, well, if we're going to go somewhere, we don't know where to go. We know what we don't want. We definitely
Right.
don't want to go, into a Catholic church. I had enough guilt in my life as it was with other things. I didn't want to go down that road. But maybe, okay, sure, we can start attending, or at least give it a shot. And my thought was, hey, we'll go once. And uh, this will be enough so that Abigail will understand that there's really nothing there and it's nothing special. And we wasted a couple hours on a Sunday, but no big deal. We'll just go to the beach afterwards, and it'll be fine. So I remember going that first time into Momentum, and we checked in the kids into the big city program. We went, listened to the worship music, which okay, I'm listening to it, trying to understand it, realizing okay, it's really just love songs. Except instead of love songs to a person, it's love songs to Jesus, God. Um, and then we listened to the message, and the message was really solid that day. And it wasn't a spiritual message as much as it was a message for how our how we should be in our daily lives. That message in particular was all about finding margin in your life. And I had a at the time I had a new role at work. I was taking on a lot of direct reports. Things were stacking up on top of each other. I was spending maybe a little bit too much time at work, and so this whole concept of finding margin and pacing myself and um, how to manage time. Uh, Aside from all the biblical stuff, it was the message itself was very helpful, and so I listened to it, paid attention to it. Came time to the end of the message for the invitation. I said, "Well, okay, that's not for me, but whatever, right?" And we walked out of there, and I remember talking to Melissa, and she asked me, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "Look." Um, I don't know about the music. I don't know about all the God stuff that they put into it, but the message I thought that was really solid, and that means a lot to me. And I can use that at work. And she said, "Okay, well, do you want to go back next week?" I said, "Well, as long as I continue to get value out of it, then sure, I'll go and listen." And we attended the next week and the week after that, and so on. Um, and as I started listening to more and more of these messages, I realized what the pastors were sharing. It wasn't necessarily a lot about God and Jesus as much as it was this is the owner's manual for life. This is, as they look through the Bible and start sharing lessons from the Bible, um, every one of those lessons I could put into practice the very next day
Yeah.
or even that day. And um, it just started to occur to me that okay, wait a minute, this is good. I'm 40 years old. I've spent my first 40 years not really understanding what I should be doing on this planet, kind of fumbling along as I go. I was in a wilderness that I didn't know that I was in, frankly. And um, as I started to hear more and more of these messages and started to realize, okay, again, let's put all the God and Jesus stuff aside, but um, let's talk about how we function as human beings. What should we be doing? And there are lessons, biblical truths that are throughout this book that really resonated with me and helped me start to realize, okay, well, again, here's a challenge that I'm facing, and here's a way to look at it. I remember there was a message about um, flushing out our animosity or ill feelings towards others, and there's somebody in my life at that time that I really had a lot of animosity towards based on um, just some things that had transpired, and I realized I was holding on to this. I didn't need to hold on to this,
Yeah.
and being able to flush that out and let that go. It, I remember walking out of that session in particular, that gathering, and it was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. Like, wait a minute, I don't need to be carrying this. and we were, able to mend fences and put things behind us, and that was so life changing just by itself, right?
Yes.
And then, you know, and all this time we had been attending for probably a good solid 6 months at this point, and had been there pretty much every week. And because I kept saying every week we walk out of there and say, well, this was a good service, but I'm only going to keep going as long as I keep finding value. And if the message
Right.
doesn't mean anything to me next week, that's it. We're done. I don't need to go. Meanwhile, Abigail's flourishing in big city.
Yes.
Jonathan's flourishing in big city. They're loving it. They're making friends. Melissa had heard the message, and she really heard the good news, and she got saved probably about 4 or 5 months in. But I still wasn't there. I wasn't at that point. It didn't speak to me, right? But I was happy to continue to attend because, hey, listen, the music's pretty good. It's just love songs. The people are nice. They're all very friendly. I don't know why. I still got a lot of my northerner in me saying, "Okay, yeah, great to meet you, but get away from me," right?
Yep.
But the message really was resonating with me. So I said, "Okay, yeah, we'll keep going." And then there was another service, and it was maybe October at the time. And Pastor Tim said, "Listen, I want to speak to you. I want to speak to the men out there. Maybe you're a coach, maybe you're a first responder, maybe you're a boss, maybe you're a father, maybe whatever it was." And it was a very pointed message, and it was speaking directly to me. And as he started listing those things out, well, I was a coach. I was coaching my son's football team. I was a first responder. I was a boss. I was a father. I'm thinking, oh, okay, he's talking to me. I better listen to what he's saying. And again, it was about being intentional. It was about being purposeful in your actions. It was about how you lead your family. And after that service, I had never really spoken to the pastor previously, but I waited for him outside. I said, "Listen, um, I don't know about any of this. I don't know if Jesus existed. I don't know if he really is the Son of God, or if he was just some guy with a really good public relations department that they're still, talking about him today." Um, but when you called me out, when you said, the coaches, the fathers, the first responders, the bosses, that's me. I'm all of those things. I know I need to listen to this. So how do I understand this? And Tim was fantastic. Gave me a great book, The Case for Christ, and because I'm a pretty analytical guy, I want to understand the why behind
Right.
this. I want to try to get through it. Um, and as I started to read that book, it occurred to me. I said, okay, if this were all true, if I knew that there was a entire universe that we can't see, that there are battles going on every day between good and evil, that God was here, that God is here, God is present around us, that Jesus came to earth to die for our sins so that we can one day be reunited with him in heaven. If I knew that all of that was true, wouldn't I be standing on the street corners shouting it? Wouldn't I be doing everything I could to tell other people about it? And I stopped and I said, well, wait a minute. People do that. That's the whole point behind what Momentum's trying to do. They're getting us together each week to say, hey, this is true. This really
Right.
happened. And around that same time, someone had given us a magnet for our fridge with the passage from Jeremiah 29:13. If you seek me wholeheartedly, you will find me. And
Mm.
that was on our refrigerator. I kept looking at that. I kept saying, okay, I am looking for you. Is all of this true? And I can't remember a, a specific point until we were in service. It was a few weeks before Christmas, and we were talking about the Christmas story and talking about Matthew and the Gospels and the story of Jesus's birth. And at the end of that message, when it came time for the invitation, and I'm dialed in, I'm listening. I am looking for you, Christ. Are you there? And I knew it. There was this feeling inside me that yes, this is all true. This is not make believe. This is not fantasy. This is not people just trying to get me into their cult to get my money or anything like that.
Right.
This is all real, and I had that overwhelming feeling, and the invitation came, and I found myself saying the words, and I found my hand going up, and I I didn't even understand, but I knew that it was true. And that first step into faith of saying, I'm gonna believe what I can't see. I'm gonna believe um, what I can't hear or touch. And again, a great Bible verse. I will walk by faith even when I cannot see.
Yeah.
And it was like stepping out onto off of a ledge and discovering that yes, there's something there. And it was just this overwhelming feeling. And I'll tell you, it took me a little while to process that because I had spent 40 years of my life being an independent person, not really having to rely on anybody, not believing in anything bigger than myself. Just, hey, I'm gonna be here for me. I'm gonna be here for my family. I'm gonna take care of what's mine. But that's it. And there's nothing higher or bigger than me. This is what I'm here for. Um, to move from that into this understanding that wait a minute, that's not true. There is God. Jesus was here. Jesus is here. He's all around us. The angels are all here. This book is true, or the series of books, the Bible is truth. And and seeing that for the first time, understanding that that's a shock to the system. I
Yeah.
remember, Christmas Eve. Uh, we had a service going through the Christmas story. I was a spiritual baby at that point, but just it was so overwhelming to me. And I remember I had to walk out of there. I had to be alone for a little bit, um, and just trying to process that everything that I thought I knew wasn't the complete truth. And now my eyes are being opened to something real that I had just never seen before. It was a shock to the system.
Yeah.
Without it hit me pretty hard. It took me a while to get comfortable with that, but um, it was it was there, and it's still there. And so uh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much of a story that is in terms of resonating with others, but for me, it was really transformational to understand that there is something larger than myself, that
Right.
there is a higher purpose, and more to the point, we don't have to guess at it because everything's been written down for us. The instruction manual, the word, it's there. We just have to read it and understand it and obey it. And
Right.
that has been transformational in my life, in Melissa's life, in our kids' lives. It's really changed. I don't think there's any way that I can summarize how much we have grown over the last 6, 7 years, whatever it's been, compared to where we were before we had gotten saved, but it's night and day. And as we've learned to pray, as we've learned to talk to God, as we've walked in our relationship with Jesus, as we have loved Him the way that He loves us, that unconditional agape love, and the devotion that we have and the faith that we have in Him, it has just done so many amazing things for us as a family. And
Yeah.
when we look back now to see how it's all lined up, it's just it's amazing. It's just one of those things where um, it blows my mind when I talk to God and say, listen, I know that you've done all of these different things for me, and it's amazing that you've done it for me. And then I think there are 8 billion people on this planet. And not only are you here with me right now having this conversation, but you're doing that with 8 billion other people at the same time. And all you want is for us to know you and love you and follow your path and worship you. And you do all these things for us. It's just it's still mind blowing to me.